This video, I was just going to go through and show you guys how to add audio. So if you wanted to add music, or in this case, I'm gonna demonstrate it using voiceover. You could do that. But it could be whatever you want. It could be like atmospheric music just to get set each scene, sort of to put it in the mood of whatever you want the story to be like. But in our case, or in my case, it's just going to be voiceover. But we'll go ahead and actually start with the game logic. So in order to start, we have to create a few components, or we have to add a couple components to our game logic game object. This is called a game object. All of these are game objects. This is a camera, canvas, event system, and this is our game logic. Game logic, but it's a game object. So we're going to add a component, and it's not going to have that immediately. You're going to just type in the top, or you could go to audio and look for audio source. Now we have that. That's great. Now, in order to access this audio source in our code, we could do that a couple different ways. I'm going to show you a one way. It's not necessarily a bad way, but there's trade-offs to do it the way that I'm about to show you. Let me go ahead and open up the script. And the script should be the same from the last time, so I didn't make any changes except for one change that I will show you. So if we look in our game logic, the only thing that I added was this, which is input get key down, key code, keypad 1, plus index. And I also put this or statement, or this or, I forgot what it's called. It's just a thing. This is basically just saying or. So if it's get key down, key code alpha 1. So this is the alpha numeric 1 on the keyboard. This is the 1 on the keypad. So the reason why I added this is because you wanted to either work with the keypad or with the keyboard. So that's all this extra code does, is just it allows it to function with the keypad. Okay, so now that we're here, we want to add a way to access this audio source inside of our code. So how are we going to do that? Like I said, you could do it a couple different ways. I'm going to show you. It's not necessarily bad, but there's some trade-offs. So the way that I'm going to show you and then the way that I'm going to do it are going to be different. So the first thing we're going to do is, for either way, we're going to create a variable called audio source. And feel free to follow along with this part. Audio source. And we could just call it a sound player. Sound player, like this. Just like that. And then in our start, we're going to do get component, and then type in the component that we want to get, which is audio source, and then do the open and close parentheses, because this is a function. And then we're going to equal this. Before this, we're going to equal this to sound player. Just like that. And that's fine. The way we're doing it right here is fine, except for one thing. This get component is a costly function. What I mean by that is, like, when you're actually starting the game, it's going to take a lot of resources in order to get this to function. The reason why we wouldn't want to use this is because it just adds load time. It's not as performant for our game. But to be honest, our game is really simple, so it's not going to make a big difference in our game. It might add a little bit of time, but it's not going to be perceivable. It's going to be like, half of a quarter of a second. Or even less than that. Or it may not add anything at all, just because our game is so small. But if we want to do this in a way that's performant, another way to do this, instead of doing it this way, this is like we're looking for this, is by getting rid of this and just making this a serialized field. Serialize field. And it's not going to pop up because the S has to be capitalized and the F has to be capitalized. Serialize field. And then, of course, when we do that, we're going to see it. We save it. We're going to see it pop up in our game logic. There should be a new field that's going to pop up here. There it is, sound player. And we just drag this audio source and put it right here. And it does the same thing. There are different reasons why you might want to use get components, but you just have to be aware that there's a trade-off, that it's a little bit less performant than just caching it in a variable. So we're going to do it this way. So now we have sound player. So this is just setting up. So now that we did this, we actually want to add a new data type into our story blocks. So the way we do that is simple. We just do it the same way we've been doing it with the string and the story blocks. We're going to add a new one called audio clip, because we want to add an audio clip, not an audio source. We're going to use this audio clip right here, and we want to change this. So this is going to be our audio clip, and I'm going to call it voiceover. But if you're going to do like background sounds, you could also do that too. Like you could call it background sound or whatever you want to call it that makes sense for your case. If you're going to add in music, you could call it music. Call it whatever you want. Then we're going to add a serialized field here. Serialized field. And then this is going to make it accessible through the Unity editor. So if we go back here and then we look, we now have a new option called voiceover. So this is great. We're making a lot of progress already. Let's go back to our assets, and now we can actually import our voiceover. So this is something that you're going to have to do beforehand. So it's a good time right now if you want to go through your story blocks and then like just record a little voiceover of each one. You could go ahead and do that. I did that already before the video started. So I'm just going to create a new folder and call it voiceover. Then I'm going to go inside, open up my folder with all my voiceovers. And then I'm just going to drag each one. We're going to go here, introduction, orb, road, run, and setting. And we're going to just drag it in here. Should take a little bit, not too long, and it will automatically compress it for you. Should be Vorbis by default, which is fine. And now that we have that here, we can just start dragging in our voiceover into each one of these. And this one, you just click and drag. The naming convention that I used was the exact same name for the voiceover and the story block. So that's the reason why the only thing that changes is the icon up here. But that's because I did that on purpose, just so I could click and then drag. Click on introduction, and then I know I'm dragging introduction into introduction. So naming things is really important whenever you're making a game, just because you want things to make sense for you, right? Road, we're going to drag road into road. Story blocks run, we're going to drag a run into run. We can go settings, and then we're going to drag setting into setting. So now if we go back to our story blocks, we should see our voice clip or audio clip matching with everything. So that's great. So we have that set. We have all that data held inside of our scriptable object. And then before we leave this, we have to make a public getter. So let's make public. And then what is the thing that we're returning? We're returning an audio clip. So you type in audio clip. and then just the name of it. So I'm going to call mine get voiceover, and then 2 parentheses, and then the open curly and then close curly, and then we're going to return this voiceover. So voice over. Save that. So now we have this public method that we can access from any file that we want. So how are we going to actually play the voice? So we already have the access to our sound player, and we already hooked up that inside of our Unity editor. So our audio source is right here. So if we want to play the voice, we're going to first add in our current story. We're going to access our current story. It's going to be current story. And then we're going to use the public method that we just made, get voiceover. Get voiceover. And then open and close parentheses. And we're going to make this equal to our sound player dot clip. And then this is going to equal that. So we're accessing the clip section, which is going to be this. And we're making this equal to our current story dot get voiceover, which is accessing this method, and it's returning this audio clip. So that's what we're doing with this piece of text. And then all we're going to do is we're going to say sound player dot play with the open and close parentheses. So that's it. It's really that simple. Adding voiceover is super easy, super simple. And then whenever we get to a new story, we want to repeat this code, but we don't want to copy and paste, because copy and pasting is bad. We should try to minimize that whenever we can. And later on in this video, there's going to be moments where you can't minimize it. So we're just going to have to copy and paste a little bit. It's a little bit bad. Maybe there's a better way to do it, but this is how I know how to do it. So instead of copy and pasting this over, we're going to highlight it, and then you can do it 2 ways. You can press Control period, or you could right click and then quick actions and refactoring. And then right here, there's extract method and extract local function. We're going to do extract method, and then it's going to extract the method for us. And then we're going to do it as play voiceover. So this is our new function. It's going to be private. And then we're just going to we're going to cut this and just paste it after our update. And that doesn't do anything in terms of function, but it's just for organization. You usually want to have your methods after your update function. Let's go ahead and get rid of that. And then we can add a comment saying this plays the voiceover. Perfect. So we have that here. We have play voiceover as a method here. And then we also want to put it here, because every time we upload, we get to a new story block, we want to play that new voice over for that one. So great. So now that we have everything hooked up, when we click play, it should be working fine. If it isn't, hey, my name is Henry. Thank you for playing my game. Press 1 to continue. You're standing in the middle of a grass field, and you see a barn behind you. You enter the barn and see him. You book it out of the barn and run. You're standing in the middle of a grass field, and you head to the road, and you're standing in the middle of a grass field. And so that's ours hooked up, and it's working fine. It's working perfect. So that's it for the voiceover. So that's pretty cool, pretty simple. Next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to transfer over these options. We're going to transfer over these options into buttons. So you don't have to do this, but this is just to get you more familiar with buttons and how buttons work. And it's a little bit more complicated than it would seem. Adding in voiceover, pretty easy. Adding in buttons, a little bit more complicated. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to change our code a little bit for this barn story. So if we go to story blocks, oh, sorry, not for barn, for the story blocks, we're going to add in after our story text, we're going to add in a couple of fields. And this is going to depend on your story and how many fields you have. I'm going to do 4 options just so you could see what it looks like with 4 and just how the code looks like with 4. But if you have less, you could do less. And if you have more, you can do more. So I think 4 is a good number. So we're going to add in serialized field. Then we're going to do string. And then option 1. Just like that. We're going to do that again. Serialized field. Then we're going to do string option 2. Do another one. Serialized field. We're going to do string option 3. Then the last one, serialized field, string, option 4. Just like that. So I'm going to do 4. I don't actually have 4 options for any of mine. I only have 2, but I'm going to show you why that's okay later on in the code. And then we're just going to change our options and put them down here. So I'm going to write here, press to touch the orb. And this is going to be our button text. So just keep that in mind. It's going to be what is shown on the button. And then the second one is going to be press to run away. And then we can actually get rid of this text on here because it will be generated at the bottom. Over here, we're going to do press to continue. Then we're going to get rid of this. An orb, we're going to do press to continue. Get rid of this. Broad, press to continue. Get rid of that. For me, it seems it's pretty simple. I tried to make my story as simple as possible. Your story could be a little bit more complex. Press to go to the barn. And then the second option is press to go to the road. And that's it for mine. As you can see, we don't have an option 3 and option 4. Mention this again. For you, you just have to put in as many options as you have for your story. So if you have 5 options, put in an extra one. If you only have 3 options, for like if your max is 3, then just put in 3 options over here. So that depends on you. Then we're going to make 4 getters for these. Now there probably is a way to simplify this to make it into an array. Probably could do that, and that could be a challenge that you could take on. I'm doing it this way just because it's really simple. But if you're feeling like challenging yourself, try to do this and refactor the code to make it work with an array. And then you don't have to worry about like how many options you have, because you could just make a single string, a string array, and use that. Just so to get you started with that, I'll just show you an example, serialized fields of how you would want to get started. So you'll do string, and then options, just like that. And then when you save that and then go back here, you're going to have an array with options, and then you can add in whatever strings you want. And you know, it would just work similarly to this, but you would have to do things a little bit differently. It would probably it will definitely make the code more readable, but we're doing it this way just because it's simpler. Get rid of that. Okay, cool. So we're gonna make 4 of these getters. So by the end of this, you should be able to make it get by yourself. So we're going to do public string because we're returning a string. And then we're going to be returning get option 1, just like that. And then we're going to say return option 1. Great. And then we're going to do it again. Public string get option 2. Do the same thing. Return option 2. And where are we getting this? Option 2 is up here. And this, we're just naming it. And then you can do the last two on your own. Okay, great. So we did this. We did option 1, option 2, option 3. So now we have a piece of code to actually access these 4 strings. Let's go into our game logic, and then we're actually going to add in a couple of things. We're going to add in more. Actually, let's do it this way first. Let's go to our canvas and let's actually put in our buttons. So I'm going to make this a little bit shorter just so we can have a little bit of more space for our buttons. And then let's go ahead and censor that again. We could have it a little bit higher, just like that. I'm going to right click on the canvas, go to UI, and then go to button text mesh pro. So here's our button. Look at it, very pretty, very nice. I'm going to click on the button. I'm going to expand it to be just about there. Drag it here. And I'm actually going to make it the width of the entire text box, just so it lines up with the text box. And then you can come in here, and we're going to go to this drop down inside of the button on the left side with the hierarchy. Going to click on text, and then this is going to be how we adjust this button text. So I'm going to make it left align. That's it. I'm just going to make it left align. I'm also going to add in padding because it's too close, in my opinion, to the left. And you know me, haha, I'm a designer. I'm going to add in padding on the left side, and I'm just going to add in 24 pixels or 24 points of padding. And then on the right, I'm going to also add in 24. And then at the top, not super necessary because we already have it in the middle. But, you know, if we're adding in padding, might as well. Going to add in 8 pixels of padding, or 8 points of padding at the top, and then 8 points of padding at the bottom. So now we have padding for our text. And you access that by going into the text mesh pro first, and then adding in that padding in this section on the left, right, top, and bottom. Okay, great. I'm going to rename this to option 1 button, just like that. And then we're going to make 4 copies of this. So right click on it. We're going to duplicate. And we're going to drag this down a little bit. So this is going to be option 2 or button 2. Option 2 button. Get rid of that right there. And then we're going to duplicate this again. I think in order to duplicate, you press Control D. There you go. And we're going to duplicate it so we have 4 buttons. So I'm going to drag this down. Space it correctly. I'm going to drag this one down. Space it correctly. Now I'm spacing it by eye, but you could also space it using the X and Y positions. Whenever you click on the button, there's a Y X position and the Y position. Then let's rename this. This is going to be option 3 button. So option 3. And then here we're going to do option 4 button. So like I said, if you have the maximum of 3 options for all of your text boxes, then you only have to make 3 buttons. I'm just doing 4 as an example. If you have 5 options, you're going to have to make a 5th button. But like I said, it depends on your story and what you wrote out. Okay, so we have our 4 buttons. They're right there, nice and pretty. And if a nice thing about buttons that's built into Unity, hey, my name is Henry. Thank you for playing my game. Press 1 to continue. It actually already has a hover state and a click state built into it. The hover state is pretty subtle, but it's there. And the click state is more noticeable. So this is like, it's already built in. We don't have to worry about that. But if you wanted to customize it, you could do that. And these are your options right here. Normal color, highlighted color, press color, select color, and disabled color. Just like that. So let's go ahead and stop. So we have our buttons. How do we actually hook it up with the logic? Well, we're going to do that next. So let's go to our game logic, and we're going to add in a couple of things. We're going to add in a couple more serialized fields. And what are we looking for? We're looking for a game, not game logic, sorry, game object. And then this is going to be button 1. And then we're going to do this again. Game object, button 2, serialized field, game object, button 3, another one, serialized field, game object, button 4. Spelled 4 wrong. And we're going to save this, and then we're going to see after our Unity is done compiling, excuse me, you can see button 1, button 2, button 3, and button 4. And in order to access this, we could just click over here, and then we have our options for all of these. Or the way that I like to do it, I just like to click and drag each of our game objects, but we could also do it this way. So this one is option 2 button. So we're going to click that. This one is option 3 button. Click right here. This one is option 4 button. Or you could just click and drag. Either one. It's the same thing. Okay, so now we have access to all of our buttons in the code by just referencing this variable, and we hooked it up in our Unity editor. So we also want to get access to this TMP text game object inside of the button. So there's a couple ways we could do that. I'll show you the first way. So the first way is we could just do a get components and look for them. So we could do TMP text, and this would be option 1, and TMP text, and this is going to be option 2, TMP text, and this is going to be option 3, another TMP text, and then this is going to be option 4. Just like that. So now we have these, and if we save, and then we go back to our game logic inside of the Unity editor, you're going to see we don't have access to them over here. These are just our buttons, but we don't have access to the actual text. It's because we haven't put a serialized field on top of it. So a way we can assign these is by going into start and saying button 1 dot get component. So we're looking for a component inside of button 1. And then we're going to say TMP text, because that's the component we want. Close it out. And we want to assign this to option 1, just like that. And then that way, now we are assigning option 1 to this button 1 components. And then we're looking for a component inside of it, which is the TMP text. And this is now assigned to option 1. Now we can do that, and it does look simpler inside of the editor, but like I said, the get component is a costly function. So maybe we don't want to do that. Maybe we want to do it the regular way that we've been doing, because it runs a little bit better. But this way does also have some drawbacks. This also increases the memory load for the RAM whenever you're actually coding the game. So this affects RAM usage, the way that I just showed you over here, this affects load time, RAM usage, and then load time. So those are the trade-offs for these two. So maybe you do want to do this. To be honest, for our game, like I said, it's really small. So get components could be a feasible option for us. For me, I think it's fine. I think I'm just going to put in serialized field inside of here, and then we could just have it there for us. So I'm going to put serialized field for all of these. Save that. And then if we go into our game logic, we're going to see these options filled in. I'm going to plop this here. Plop this here. Plop this here. That's one reason why you might want to just click these buttons, because if you accidentally click on something else, it's just going to get a little bit messy. For this example, you don't know which one is which because we did not rename these. So good idea is to always rename your stuff, even if it's built in. So this is going to be option 1 text. Just keep it a capital. Option 1 text. Change this to option 2 text. This is going to be option 3 text. And then this is going to be option 4 text. Okay. So now if we go back to our game logic, you should see that updated option 1 text, option 2 text, option 3, and option 4 text. Okay, great. We rename that. We have access to all of these. So far, the only thing that we have done is actually just get access to all of these components inside of our code. We haven't actually done any code yet. So the first thing that I want to do is have a way, so if we only have 2 options, to turn off these other buttons. So for example, I know for the very first introductory one, we only have 1 option. So how can we turn off the rest of these buttons if we know we only have 1 option for the first one? So let's create the code for that. So the way we're going to do that is by doing a private function. And what are we returning? We are actually not returning anything. We just want it to do something and then just end. So in order to say that inside of the code, we're going to say void because we don't expect anything back. And then we're going to do manage buttons. And that's going to be the name of this function. And as you can see, it's not throwing an error because we said void. So even just like this, technically it's fine, but you don't want to do this. You actually want to write in some code. Okay, so the code that we're going to say is we're going to look for the option 2 text. So we're going to say inside of our current story, because that's where we are at currently, inside of our current story, we want to get option 2. So if get option 2 is equal to empty, then we don't want to generate any of the buttons except for the first one. So if option 2 is equal to empty, we want to say turn off the rest of the buttons. So how are we going to do that? We're going to do button 2 dot set active, and we're going to say false. And then button 3 dot set active is also going to be false. Button 4 dot set active is also going to be false. So you might be asking, how come we aren't looking at button 1? Or why aren't we looking for the text 1 option? Because all of our story blocks are at least going to have the first option. If it doesn't have the first option, you made a mistake. You need to go back and put in at least one option for all of them. If it's press 1 to continue or press 1 to go back, it doesn't matter. There should always be at least one option. If you don't have that, then you're just going to be stuck where you're currently at. And that is bad design. So you always want the players to have an option. So we're not looking at the first option because at minimum, they should always have one option. So we're going to say if current story option 2, if that is equal to nothing, then we're going to turn off these buttons. But let's say that option 2 does have something. So we're going to say else if current story dot get option 3 Did I do something wrong here? Get option 3. Current story dot get option 3 is equal to, oh, it was just wanting me to finish writing. Okay, so that was just the problem with that. Then we want to make sure that button 2, or not button 3, button 2, we want to set this to active. So if it was inactive before, we just want to set it to active now. And if it's already active, then it's just going to say like, okay, it's active. So let's just set it back to active. It's going to be fine. So we want to set that to active because if the third one is empty, then it's just going to, then we don't need the rest after 3. We're going to do button 3 dot set active, and then this is going to be false. Button 4 dot set active, and then this is also going to be false. Okay, so now the only thing that we have to do now is just do this again for option 4. So else if current story, and actually there's a way we could not have to write this true in the beginning. If we set, before doing this if statement, if we set all the buttons to active in the very beginning, we could avoid having to write set active. We actually don't have to do it for button 1 because it's always going to be active no matter what. So we're going to do set active, and then this is going to be true. Button 3 set active, and then this is also going to be true. And then button 4 dot set active, and then this is going to be true. So that way, at the very start, the very first time that or every single time we run this function, we're going to assume that all of the buttons are going to be turned on. We're going to be using all of the buttons. So that way, we only have to check if we have to turn them off. So if the current story dot get option 4 is equal to empty, then we can turn off button 4 dot set active, and then this is going to be false. So if the second option is empty, then we're going to set the second option, the third option, and the fourth option to empty. If the third option is empty, we're going to set the third button and the fourth button to, we're going to turn off those buttons. And then if the fourth option is empty, we're going to just turn off the 4. And if none of these are true, we're just not going to do any of this. So it's just going to skip this part. So if we are using all 4 options, it should have all 4 buttons appear right there. Now, great. We're done with that. Now we just have to set the option text equal to our current story options. So the way we're going to do that is by doing option 1 dot text is equal to current story dot get option 1, and then close that out. And then we can do this for the rest of them. Option 2 dot text is equal to current story dot get option 2, close that out. Option 3 dot text is equal to current story dot get option 3, do that. And then we're going to do it for the last one. Option 4 dot text is equal current story dot get option 4, just like that. So we have this, and if we wanted to, we could actually set these. No, I think that's fine right there. So let's save that. And then if we go in, I'm going to actually turn down the desktop audio just because I don't want you to hear my voiceover. So you shouldn't be able to hear the voiceover now. So we're going to click play. Voiceover is still working. It didn't work. Why is it not working? What the heck? We just spent all that time coding. What's going on? Oh, I'm just joking. So the reason why it's not working is because we just made the function, but we didn't call the function anywhere. So in order to call the function, it's super simple. We just go to wherever we want to call the function. And in this case, the name of the function is just called manage buttons. So in the very beginning, we want to manage buttons. That's it. And just put it there. And that is how you call a function. Then here, we want to also manage buttons. Perfect. So now, when we play, it should be managing the buttons. There we go. Now, if we click it, it's still not working. Why is it not working? We just spent all that time and it's not working. When you click on it, it doesn't work. You can still click 1. And as you can see, the buttons turn off and on as they are needed. But the functionality of the button still isn't there. In order to do that, we actually have to make the functionality for each individual button inside of the voiceover, inside of the game logic. So how do we do that? The way we do that is by doing this for each button. So in order to do that, we have to make a function, a method for each button. So in order for our buttons, okay, I feel like I'm getting a little bit ahead. So if we go into into our Unity editor and click on the button 1, you can see there's this thing. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, there's this on click. You click plus right there, and then it's asking for a game object. In this case, it's going to be game logic, and we drag it in here. And then it's looking for a function, and then we go into game logic, and this is where we can access our functions. In order for our functions to be accessible through here, we have to make the methods public. So we're going to do public. Like I said, you can do this, but just, be careful whenever you do this. And then we're going to return void because we don't want it to actually give us anything in return. We just want it to do a function and then stop. And then since this is going to be for button 1, we could literally just name it button 1, just like that. So what do we want it to do? We wanted to do this thing up here, but we wanted to do it only for the first one. So instead of doing index, we wanted to do the first one. So a way we could do that is literally just copying this, right-clicking, quick actions and refactoring, and then extract that method. And then we could say main logic, and then it's going to generate this by itself automatically, which is really great. So you don't have to necessarily worry about what these mean, but I'll explain to you. So this is just saying that in order for this for this method to run properly, it needs two inputs. It needs an array of story blocks, and then it automatically names it next stories. And then it also needs an integer, and then name that index. And then it will call that inside of here. So we want to do this for every time that they press a button down, or if they press a button. So this is our main logic. So we will just right here, main logic, and then do that. And as you can see, it's throwing an error because it's asking us to input these two pieces of information, the next stories and then the index. So in order to input this, we actually need this little piece of code right here, because that is what is determining what the next stories is. And we can do that just by copy and pasting. Usually you don't want to copy and paste, but in this case, it's just one line. It's not that big of a deal. I'm going to rename it just next, just to keep it simpler. And then we're going to add in next inside of here. And then it's also asking for an integer. So the integer is going to determine what story block we want to go to next. So in this case, we want to go to the first one because this is the button 1. So we always start counting at 0. So we're going to start at 0. So our main logic is going to look for next, and then the integer is going to be 0. That's it. And this button should now be working, and we just have to make the other buttons. We'll say button. We're going to do public void button 2. And we can actually just copy and paste this just like that. And then public void button 3. Paste that. And then public void button, that was my mistake, button 4. And then paste that in again. And instead of 0 for button 2, we're actually going to do 1 because we start counting at 0. The second one is going to be 1. So 0, 1. Then the button 3 is going to be 2. And then button 4 is going to be 3. And then you would just have to add in the extra ones after. Now you're saying, wait, if we are looking for index 3, but there is no index 3, how is that going to work? Isn't that going to throw an error? It would, yes. But luckily for us, we did a manage buttons. So we're not even going to be able to click this unless there is a fourth options, because it's just the game is automatically going to turn it off. So great. We added these functions. How do we actually hook it up now? In order to hook it up, we just go here, go down, game logic, then go to game logic and then look for button 1 for button 1. Then go down, do the add, drag in our game logic, game object, game logic, game object, and then look for button 2. And then if we go to button 3, we're going to add, drag in our game logic, game object. Then this is button 3. And then we're going to add the last time the game logic here. And then we're going to look for button 4. Now for me, I do not have, if we go back into our scripts, I should have not closed that. It's going to take forever to load again. I don't have anything beyond 2 buttons. So for me, you're never going to see button 3 and button 4. But if you do have them, it should populate for you if you did the code correctly. And if you have more than 4 options for some of them, just add in an extra one It's literally the same thing. You go over here, you add in option 5, then you get a public string, get option 5, and then you would just have to do this same pattern, except add in an option 5. So it's really simple. The way I did it this way, you could do it with arrays, but I did it this way just so it's easy to follow. If you have more than if you have more than 4 options, or if you have less than 2, or if you have like only 2. So this should all be working now. If you click play, it should populate. And then you can actually click the button and it will populate the new buttons and remove them whenever you don't need them. Just like that. So we have a pretty extensive game now. We have buttons, we have text that gets updated. So let's say we're done. We want to upload this to itch.io. How would we do that? So the first thing we're going to do is make sure that we have everything saved. Do a quick run through of your code of your game. Just make sure that everything is working properly. Then we're going to go to File. Then we're going to go to Build Settings. And then as you can see right here, it's asking what kind of build are we doing? Windows, Mac, Linux, dedicated server, or WebGL. And we actually want to do WebGL. So we're going to click Switch Platforms or Switch Platform. And this is going to take a while. So I'll just let it sit. Okay, great. So it's still, after it's done doing that one load bar, it's gonna be doing another load bar. So don't worry about it if it's still not allowing you to do anything. Another load bar is gonna pop up and then you're gonna have to wait again. So this is gonna take a little bit, so don't worry too much about how long it's gonna take. Okay, did a little bit of troubleshooting. If we go to player settings, and then we go to, where is it? Publishing settings. We should do the compression format to disable. And it automatically saves. There's no like save button, but there you go. And then exit out. And then let's go ahead and do another clean build inside of this. And then it's going to take a while. So we're just going to have to do that. So I will go ahead and edit that in. So just so you know, you have to turn off the compression before you upload it, or else it's just not going to work. And I showed you how to do that literally just right now. Okay, great. Click allow access, and then you should have the web build right there set for you to go. I don't know what the rest of this stuff is. I'm pretty sure I don't need that. Okay, so here's our build. If we click here, failed to load, should not be working because we have to click build and run in order to actually see it run. Okay, so we're going to right click on this and then we're going to send to a compressed folder. And then you could just call the same thing web build.zip and it should have that there. Okay, great. Now that we sent it to a compressed folder, we are ready to upload it to itch.io. So the first thing that you have to do is make your own accounts. Pretty sure you guys can handle making your own accounts. After you make your accounts, you're going to go to the top right and then click the drop down and then just upload a new project. And then here we're going to call it, for me, I'm just going to call it the Looping Barn because that's the name of the game. And then the project URL, we could say the Looping Barn, sure. Show description or tagline. Example, or what is it going to be? Practice project for game development. It's a game. It's not downloadable. you want to make it in HTML. For me, I'm just going to do prototype. You could keep that the same, or you could do no payments. I probably don't want to do paid. And then we're going to upload this, and we're going to look for our build, which I completely forgot where I saved it. The game jam? Yeah, text walkthrough. First game. And then we're looking for the web zip. And we're going to click open. It's going to upload. Set difference price for the file. This file will be played in browser. Okay, just click that. And then you can add in your details and whatnot. I'm just going to save and view the page. Thanks for using itch. And then it should look something like this, and you can click play. And then it will actually run the game in the browser for you. It should. Unless I did something wrong. It's possible I did do something wrong. I might have done something wrong. I'll keep the mess up just so you could see me struggling a little bit. Like, I don't know how to do all this. Okay, and then that should be fine. Now if we click save and then we click view page and then it's loading for the first time, we click play, fingers crossed, nothing bad happens. And it works. Sick. So that's it. I now realized that you weren't able to hear the voiceover. But yeah, that's how you do upload your game onto itch. You will need an itch to participate in the game jam. So go ahead and make an itch. And I'm actually excited to see your guys's text adventure. So send the link to your text adventure also inside of the game jam, because I am really interested in playing your game. Okay, that's it for me. Hope this was educational and easy to follow along. And I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.